My name is Joelle Votor. I am the Mid-State Management Forester for the Massachusetts Department of Conservation and Recreation, Division of State Parks and Recreation. This virtual tour is of the Hadley Aiken lot, which is an isolated parcel of the Templeton State Forest System. It is a landlocked state forest that is located north of Route 2, east of Route 2A, and south of Route 202 in the town of Templeton, Massachusetts. It totals 304 acres and is a conglomeration of parcels that have been acquired over the past 120 years. Prior to state ownership, the land use history of the property includes intensive agriculture and wood harvesting, followed by reforestation plantings done by the Civilian Conservation Corps once the state purchased the earliest parcels. The property currently contains a 183.9 acre plantation of red pine and a 15.5 acre plantation of Scots pine, totaling nearly 200 acres. A CCC camp stationed at Otter River State Forest that was established in 1934 was responsible for the plantations currently occupying the site at Hadley Aiken today. There is a long history of forest management activity within these plantations. Much of the commercial harvesting operations began in the early 1980s, with the most recent harvest implemented here in 2015. The plantations have been declining in health and vigor over the past couple of decades from the stagnation and growth. Stagnation of this monoculture has left it highly susceptible to insect and disease infestation, which the site is currently undergoing from the red pine scale insect. There are several reasons why we will be conducting this timber sale at this time. The first is that the red pine plantation here is beginning to die back rapidly due to the red pine scale insect. The entire plantation is showing signs of infestation and decline at this time. The purpose of this project is to harvest the red pine trees which are succumbing to mortality from the red pine scale outbreak, while it is still profitable to do so. By removing the trees, we will be reducing the risk to public safety while simultaneously having the opportunity for the trees to be manufactured into wood products. Finally, this project will be a continuation of forest management that has been occurring on this site for over 40 years. In addition to the purpose of the project, the property has a high level of illegal off-road vehicle use that is causing erosion and other negative ecological and economic impacts to the state forest. We will be able to use in-kind services through the project contract to address and mitigate some of these issues. In the spring of 2020, a forest stand exam was conducted within the project area to determine what the condition of the overstory trees were in, and also what was the condition of the advanced regeneration in the understory. As I mentioned, this plantation has undergone extensive forest management in the past with a primary goal of regenerating the site to a mixture of native species that are well suited to the growing conditions available at Hadley Aiken. An assessment was made that in areas that contain at least 500 stems per acre of desirable advanced regeneration, a partial overstory removal would be implemented. In areas that did not have the desirable advanced regeneration, another intermediate shelterwood harvest would be implemented. The desirable species for this site were white pine and red oak trees that were at least 1 foot tall, had good form, and were free to grow. Unfortunately, the overstory across the entire plantation is dying back at this time, and rapidly at that. I anticipate that the overstory of the red pine plantation will be dead by the end of the next growing season. We've already seen extensive mortality in just this growing season alone. As a result of this inventory, there are two main types of silviculture that will be implemented within the project area. The first is a partial overstory removal on 149 acres. This treatment is the third treatment of the 3-stage shelterwood regeneration harvesting system. This acreage was harvested in the 1980s and most recently in 2015 to successively reduce the density of overstory trees to mitigate the amount of light that will reach the forest floor in order to regenerate the forest stand over time. This has been extremely successful on these 149 acres. The understory throughout the project area contains an average of 2,567 stems per acre of desirable advanced regeneration. In this case, desired regeneration is native tree species that are well suited to grow here on this site, White pine is the most abundant form of regeneration present, followed by hemlock, northern red oak, and a mixture of hardwood species. One of the most important goals in this harvest will be to protect as much of this regeneration as is feasible. Some of the woodier advanced regeneration will likely be killed in some locations, but this is to be expected. An overstory removal, or the final cut of the three-stage shelterwood method, usually seeks to remove all of the mature overstory trees within the stand. In this case, we will be conducting a partial overstory removal, whereas 5 to 7 trees per acre will be retained for future wildlife trees into the future. We sought to maintain native tree species when possible, followed by healthy red or Scots pine trees. This area will look drastically different from its pre-harvesting condition. The understory will be flooded with constant light, and in a few years, the understory will be extremely dense with vegetation, making it very difficult to walk through. The second type of silviculture that will be implemented within the project area is 20 acres of an intermediate shelterwood harvest. This will be conducted in areas that do not have sufficient advanced regeneration to conduct the partial overstory removal. This is mostly in areas that were unharvested in the 1980s but were included in the 2015 harvest. While some regeneration is present, it is not an overall high enough stem count yet to remove the overstory. This treatment will focus on removing 2/3 of the existing overstory basal area and will maintain 30 square feet of basal area per acre. The area will look somewhat different than its pre-harvested condition. However, there will be many trees left in the overstory. An increase of light to the forest floor is to be expected, and it is assumed that regeneration will take hold here in the coming years. Hadley Aiken is located on a glacial outwash plain containing sand and gravel, and it is a very droughty site. Silvicultural treatments that are suited for the development and growth of species that are well adapted to the growing conditions here have been considered through all past treatments and are very successful in regenerating native species well suited for these dry soil conditions. This harvest was marked using a leaf tree marking system, whereas the trees that are marked in yellow paint are to be retained and the trees that are unmarked are to be harvested. This is a native oak tree that was marked for retention. 5 to 7 trees per acre were left for future wildlife trees. These triple stripe trees indicate the limits of the leaf tree marking system, whereas machinery are not allowed to operate beyond the triple stripes. Triple striping were used along the property boundaries and wetlands and some of the filter strips that are going to be unharvested. Trees marked with a yellow X are to be harvested. These are mostly along the edge of the roadways where public safety is a concern, to have dead standing trees within striking distance of the road. This is the main truck road that runs through the interior of the state forest. It will be used to access 2 landings, one on the eastern side and one on the western side of the property. This is the easternmost landing. It was used most recently in 2015. It was also used in several previous timber harvests. At the completion of logging activities, this landing will be seeded with a local conservation grass seed mix. Some skid trails will also be seeded, especially those that are on steeper slopes, to help aid in stabilization. The truck road is used in the winter months by a local snowmobile group. Communication with that group will be important to ensure user safety. The area will be closed during active logging hours, and signs will be posted at both entrances on this road to ensure safety of the public wanting to use this area. This is the westernmost landing. This was also utilized in 2015. This road leads from our legal right-of-way to access the state forest. and this area will be utilized to deck logs. The road continues in about a 90-degree angle to the east in this direction. An additional in-kind service will be the treatment and control of invasive species. This is the landing that was used in the 1980s and has become overgrown with the invasive species glossy buckthorn. This is the most concentrated occurrence of invasives on the property. There are scattered occurrences of glossy buckthorn, oriental bittersweet, and autumn olive along the interior truck road and surrounding the area around the far eastern landing. This is a skid trail that was established in 2015 and will be utilized again for this harvest. Areas that are disturbed by harvesting operations will be stabilized throughout the operation and finally before the contract is closed. Skid trails will be slashed in by the harvester, and water bar installation will be conducted on skid trails that will require it due to slope. Any further stabilization will be implemented if deemed necessary. Landings will be seeded with a conservation grass mix as well as some skid trails if necessary. A cut-to-length logging system will be utilized for this operation. A processor and forwarder will be used to cut and move wood from the stump to the landing. Trees that are cut will be processed on the stump, meaning that the tops will be left in the woods. As you can see here, this is a pile of tops from the harvest in 2015. Alternate timber harvesting systems include whole tree logging, where the entire cut tree is processed on the landing. Due to the droughty soils of this site, it was desired to process trees in the woods so that slash can add nutrients to the forest floor, and the slash can also work to help stabilize soils. There are several wooded wetlands within the project area or along the edge of the harvest area. Additionally, there is one perennial stream and one intermittent stream within the project area, and one intermittent stream outside of the project area, which will be crossed by tractor-trailer trucks on the main truck road. Additionally, there is one potential vernal pool located in the eastern portion of the project area. Filter strip 2, which is where I'm standing right now, is one of 3 filter strips on the site and will have 50% of its basal area removed with this harvest. The remaining 2 filter strips will be left unharvested. All wetlands will have a 50-foot no-cut buffer unless an existing skid trail runs through this buffer. This filter strip is marked with red paint with a red F. And all trees, as I mentioned, that are marked with yellow paint are to be retained. A review of the Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program Atlas shows that there are no habitat restrictions located within the project area. In 2015, there was a wood turtle habitat area along the eastern portion of the property, but this area has since been absolved. In conclusion, the silviculture prescription that I prepared for this site is available on the DCR website and contains an in-depth description of how this project was designed. Thank you for the opportunity to present this information for you today.